On September 12, 1982, two police officers were hunting in a remote part of Alaska near Anchorage. They found a human leg bone sticking out of the sand by the Kinnick River. Knowing it might be a crime scene, they marked the location on their map and reported it the next day. Crime scene experts unearthed the remains, which were still wearing women's clothing. They found a shell casing for a .223 caliber bullet nearby. The autopsy showed the victim, a woman, had been shot 3 times about 6 months earlier, suggesting she was murdered. Sherry Morrow, a 23-year-old exotic dancer from Anchorage, went missing for 10 months before her body was found. During the autopsy, it was noticed that there were no bullet holes in her clothing, indicating she may have been shot without them on. A hospital bandage found wrapped in her clothing suggested she might have been blindfolded before being shot. Dental records confirmed her identity. Sherry mentioned being offered $300 for a photo shoot before she disappeared, but the police lacked evidence to pursue the photographer as a suspect, aside from a shell casing commonly used by hunters. Sherry Morrow's body was found after 10 months of being missing. A reporter asked if her death was linked to 2 other unsolved deaths in the same area. One woman was unidentified, while the other was Joanne Messina, an exotic dancer from Anchorage. Little evidence was found at their gravesites. Police denied a connection publicly but suspected otherwise privately. The cases raised concerns of a serial killer targeting young women, including dancers and prostitutes from Anchorage. However, without evidence, they couldn't confirm it. A man driving his truck on a quiet Anchorage highway encountered a distressed young woman on June 13, 1983. She was partially unclothed, had a handcuff on one wrist, and appeared much younger than he initially thought. In a panic, she jumped into his car seeking refuge from something outside. A man driving a truck encountered a distressed young woman on the road. Despite seeing nothing alarming outside, he decided to help her and drove her to a nearby motel as per her request. The girl, identified as Cindy Paulson, appeared terrified and had a handcuff on one wrist. The motel receptionist alerted the police, who arrived promptly. Cindy recounted her frightening experience to the police, who recognized her genuine fear and assisted her accordingly. Cindy, a street worker in Anchorage, encountered a seemingly harmless man with a beard and glasses who asked for her services. However, upon getting into his car, he handcuffed her and threatened her with a gun. He took her to a house, chained her in the basement, and assaulted her. When he mentioned taking her to his cabin, Cindy feared for her life. She realized he intended to kill her, as he had shared personal details that made her a threat to him. She knew she had to escape to survive. Cindy managed to escape from her captor at the airport after realizing he intended to harm her further. She bravely fled into the forest and later flagged down a truck driver who took her to safety. When Cindy shared her ordeal with the police, they were amazed by her courage and detail. She insisted on returning to the airport to identify the hangar where she was held captive. To their astonishment, they found the plane still there, but without the attacker. This discovery marked a crucial development in the investigation. The police began taking notes about the plane's details and tag numbers when the airport security guard approached them. He informed the officers that the previous night, he had seen the owner of the plane acting suspiciously with something inside his car. This added another layer of suspicion to the case. The police followed up on Cindy's account and visited Robert Hansen, whose car and appearance matched her description of the attacker. Robert invited them in and cooperated with their questions. His house layout and hunting trophies matched Cindy's description. When asked about his whereabouts, Robert said he was with friends the previous night and provided their contact information as alibis. He allowed the police to search his property without hesitation. The police, convinced they were dealing with a serial killer, suspected Robert Hansen, but lacked evidence. They sought help from FBI profiler John Douglas, who described the killer as a successful man in his 40s, an avid hunter and possibly with a speech defect. This profile closely matched Robert Hansen, prompting authorities to obtain a search warrant for his house. They found incriminating evidence, including maps with markings matching burial sites and a rifle linked to the murders. Hansen's former alibi also recanted, sealing his fate. Given Douglas's track record, a judge granted a search warrant for Hansen's house. Inside, they found damning evidence, including a hunting map with 37 marked X's, some corresponding to where the victims were found. They also discovered a .223 caliber rifle and a bag of women's jewelry, including a necklace belonging to Sherry Morrow. As the FBI was loading evidence from Robert's house into their truck, a neighbor approached them, anxious and skittish. She revealed that her husband had pretended to be an alibi for Robert, but he was lying. This revelation shattered Robert's last defense. The police got Robert to confess to the murders of 4 discovered women after offering him a deal. He admitted to those crimes but wouldn't speak about others. The police suspected he was involved in more cases, but couldn't prove it. Robert Hansen admitted to driving around Anchorage at night, seeking young and vulnerable women, often prostitutes or exotic dancers. He would approach them, posing as a professional photographer offering paid photo shoots. Many of these women, aspiring models, eagerly agreed. He instructed them to meet him at a designated location, usually a fast food restaurant. However, Hansen would arrive much earlier, hiding in his car to assess if the women were alone. When they arrived unaccompanied, he would approach and ask them to get into his car. Unbeknownst to them, there was a handcuff already latched onto the passenger side door, with an open cuff ready. Once they got in, he would pretend to help them with their seatbelt, only to cuff them and draw a gun, threatening them into silence. Robert Hansen admitted during his confession that he had performed his sinister routine so many times that it had become almost like muscle memory for him. After handcuffing the women inside his car, he would take them to his house, chaining them up in his basement as Cindy had described. Following hours of assault, he would transport them to the airport and fly them to his cabin, not far from where the bodies were discovered. Once at the cabin, he would undress them, blindfold them, and assist them outside with their handcuffs still on, instructing them to run. Believing they had a chance to escape, the women would flee into the woods. Unbeknownst to them, Hansen had no intention of letting them go. He knew that if they reached the water's edge surrounding his cabin, they would drown. Hansen would give them a significant head start to create the illusion of escape, before arming himself with a knife and hunting rifle to pursue them over the following hours or days. Robert Hansen's chilling modus operandi involved stalking his victims through the woods, intentionally injuring them to create a blood trail, and then hunting them down. After the women realized there was no hope for escape, he would shoot them before burying them in shallow graves. Hansen ultimately confessed to killing 17 victims, though it's believed there may have been more. Despite efforts to locate additional grave sites, Hansen took many of his secrets to the grave when he died in prison in 2014, leaving behind unanswered questions and unresolved cases.